Okay, so what I'm going to do here is run through a basic workflow of interpreting well some of the problems that we typically encounter. The well that I've got here is University Land 632 number 1. This is identified in our database as having a quad combo of G7. So we should have sonic density, neutron, PE, all the curves necessary to do an analysis. Now I've got a basic plot format here that will visualize the raw data. In the well, we have a set that has a whole bunch of curves in it. Some of them are from the vendor, some of them are from interpretations prior. And what we're going to do is run a user app to go ahead and import this data and to rename it using the correct mnemonics so that the plot formats pick everything up and that we can work the well. So I've got a user program called rename curves. Basically, all that it does is it takes the raw data that we give it and it renames it. We don't use the extra deep resistivity or the extra shallow. This has already picked up Baker Hughes mnemonics automatically for the deep, medium, shallow resistivity readings. We've got the density gamma ray, which is normally what I use for a reference. KTH is our corrected curve. In other words, it's got uranium stripped out of it. We've got the potassium, thorium, and uranium channels for the spectral gamma ray, SP caliper. The sonic curve that has been identified in this well is DT, E, and R. If we take a look at that data, it's in the wrong units of pounds, but it's been identified as a sonic curve. And it's got values that look about right for sonic data between 120 and 42 to 43 microseconds per foot. So we'll go ahead and put that in there. We've got ZDNC for density, the correction, PE, and then the limestone neutron porosity. So please go ahead and run this program. What you'll see is that it's going to copy the curves over. Sometimes the plots and IP do not update automatically, so we'll go ahead and do that. So there's the data. The first thing that we can tell by looking at this is that a couple of the curves are not in the right units. First is the capacity curve. Normally we like to put this units that make sense. So I've got some user formulas here that this is just for consistency, so all of the curves have the same units. So edit set, potassium, there it is, multiply by 100. Okay, so we can see now that the potassium curve looks the way it should. We know that we had some issue with this ET being negative, so multiply it by -1 to flip it. Why that is the case doesn't tell you. Okay, so upon further inspection of the sonic curve, it looks like it's garbage. It's not going to be usable. So we'll have to construct a synthetic sonic in this. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. So I'll say that at this point, we've got the data renamed, it's been plotted. The next step that we have to do is bring tops into the well. And the easiest way to do this is to copy tops from an adjacent well that's not too far away, and then we'll adjust them. So I'm going to go ahead and use this University 7-3 number 1. We've got a user program that I've written. Run this, and what it's going to do is copy those tops depth to depth. So we'll find that well, 7-3 number 1. And we'll find this well that we're working with, which is 660. Copy tops. And I'll have again some questions. Plot. All right, so there they are. Now what I'll do is first of all, I'm going to go ahead and delete this one because we don't have the Grayberg penetration here. Adjust the San Andreas screen down a little bit. And then if I just click on IP here, it copies depth on the plot. Or I click, we can adjust the default range so that everything is sort of in space. So zooming in on this a little bit, right? Go ahead and adjust these tops so that they're a little bit more precise. This sort of analysis is going to come with time. Right? We're going to have to understand what lithology looks like in the Permian Basin and how to do this. But basically, what I'm looking at here are clear identifiers of what's going on. Right, San Andreas is typically a mixed carbonate formation. I've got a transition here from the Glorieta, which is primarily a sand. You can see it on the spectral gamma ray. The Clear Fork usually ends in this carbonate debris flow on the top deposition. Pick it there. Sprayberry, I'm going to have to move this down a little bit past this lower Clear Fork shale, so where that neutron is high, separation from density. And then the marker for the middle Sprayberry is going to be down here. Again, I'm looking for high neutron, more of a shaly interval. Same thing here where that ends. Gel Mill Formation comes down to where the lower Sprayberry shale starts, right there. And the Dean is this high density and low resistivity region, which are wet. So high gamma ray marker on the Wolfcamp A where it starts, and then I'm going to go down to here. This is basically a big carbonate free flow. Wolfcamp B, if I look at the neutron density, I can sort of see what's going on here. And I'll go all the way down to the bottom. Strawn interval, there's some garbage here. Positive, I'm actually getting probably into the top of the Chester or something, or one of these shale stringers in the Strawn, that's fine. Set that there. Wolfcamp B, I'm looking at this transition from this sort of gray shale that's got this low resistivity to these high resistivity spikes. Typically, I'll pick that somewhere about there. And then, whether you want to include this little interval here within the Wolfcamp B or the C, it really doesn't matter. The reason that we're picking pops is for petrophysical analysis. So we're trying to identify intervals that are of similar lithology, so when we run regressions, we're fixing the data and normalizing it. It makes sense from well to well also to make sure that we're consistent. So for the most part, I think this is fine. I can see already that there's a couple of spikes here in the data where there's been an issue while logging, and we'll have to correct that. Other than that, looks good, I'll save it. So we've got, at this point, the tops identified and picked in the well that we copied from another well. We've got the units and the correct measurements. Everything looks like it's okay. Next step is to look at the data and see if it's necessary to depth shift. Typically, if there have been multiple runs, or if it's quad combo data, depth shifting is almost necessary every time. If it's a triple combo run and the logging conditions were fairly good, which in this case the hole looks like it's in pretty good condition, we may not need to depth shift the data. However, I normally go through at about a 400, 500-to-1 scale, take a quick look at some of these spikes and stuff to make sure that they're consistent with each other through gamma ray resistivity and then nuclear data. Looks like it's pretty good shape here. I don't see a lot of busts at all. But for purposes of demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and run the depth shift module just to illustrate how that works. Here at the bottom, we're missing some gamma ray data, so I'm just going to set the bottom of our top where the gamma ray ends. Not worry about that. When you run the depth shift module, interactive depth shift, I do not run the wizard. I've got pre-saved formats that I use in my database. I can just load one of these for triple combo data. And all it's doing is identifying the references and which curves are shifting and mnemonics for the output curves. So I'm not going to use these existing depth shifts. They were saved in the template, but they are of no use to me here. This is the sort of format I get. Now with the most recent version of IP, they modified the depth shift module such that we cannot edit the track headers and the configuration of the curves in bulk. We have to do it track by track, which is just a nuisance, if anything. But what we want to do is get consistent coloring and scaling here so that we're able to look at these curves and make the depth shifts. So I'll come in here, I'll flip these, so I'm always going to high gamma ray with low. Inverse relationship. Color these black and red. Make the curves a little bit thicker so that they're easier to see. Depth shifting curve is going to be in red. Reference gamma ray is going to be in black. I'll increase the scale on the resistivity there because we get some resistivity. These out there, so I don't want it to go off the track. What I will also do is copy all the curves into a new track so that I can see them stacked against each other. I'm doing this by holding down the control key on my keyboard, using my right mouse button, clicking and dragging these things and dropping them into the new track that I create. And then I'll go ahead and change the colors on this spray. So now it's a process of going through here and just kind of aligning everything so that it makes sense. I'll just set the top here. Very minor shift, right? And then I'm going to watch this right track as I sort of scroll down and see if there's any misalignments that I need to correct. For the most part, these are looking pretty good. Right here, you might say, well, these 3 points need to be fixed a little bit. But really what I'm looking for are very characteristic signals, right, or patterns in the data. So I see some of these nice spikes and stuff, they're easy to align to, and if I fix these, pretty much everything else will line up above and below. So just going through here, sometimes there's an inverse relationship between the data, right? It changes based off the type of lithology that you have. And the more conventional stuff, you may see something like this, where bulk density mirrors the gamma ray in the way that we have it scaled. In other cases, it's going to track like the neutron in this. This stuff I'm not too worried about because we're on a scale of 200 to 1. So we're sort of really in the weeds here, but everything's looking good so far. This data. And then same thing here, right? In the resistivity track, you've got sort of an inverse mirror relationship with gamma ray. So this would be high resistivity with high gamma ray. And oftentimes, if you've got shales, you'll have high resistivity with low gamma ray carbonates and then low resistivity with high gamma ray. So it's not very straightforward just to assume single orientation or polarity between the curves when you depth shift them. Again, very minor changes here. This data set is in pretty good shape. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes only. If I were to work this well on my own, I probably wouldn't even have gone through the trouble of depth shifting at all. It's already in pretty good shape. Condition it was in. Again, I'm kind of looking through here. These are all good. You know, maybe this is off a little bit. Needing to come down. Now here, you see this may have been an interval where you've got some interbedded things and could have been some stick and pull to logging through it. So you see that depth offset here. It really is with the resistivity bulk density. So I'll line that up, fix these things. Just make sure everything that I had above didn't change significantly. Then trying to identify what's going on here. Some of these spikes may be bad data, washouts or something, but if they're consistent, go ahead and fix that. Here I see fix that first, right? And then that I've got these locked basically on the bottom for something that I think is correct. Then I can go about fixing the stuff above it. So I have to, in this case, right, identify what I believe the truth to be. So I have two of these curves, nuclear readings, that are showing me the secondary spike here that's sort of aligning with this little blip. And I see my resistivity is off. So I'll move my resistivity up, match that. Kind of sort it out. Just like so. Everything's looking pretty good. And sort of align this stuff down here. I'm all right with all of this. Keep on going, right? Slight depth offset with bulk density there. So it's all looking really good. You see these things lining up again. And this is really, from a course standpoint, normally when I depth shift wells that are in really bad shape, so I'll take a few passes through the data. I'll go through first and find very characteristic spikes, line those up, and set fixed points here so that it doesn't stretch and move the data. And then I'll come back a second time and go through and make more detailed shifts as I need to. But for the most part, I'm not too worried about this. Make some changes there. I'll lock this back up here. Okay. Here you see there's a bit of a change in this thing, so my God. And this is very detailed. Again, normally I wouldn't even worry about shifts on this order of magnitude because it's not going to make a significant difference in the interpretation. We want to get the data as close as possible. I mean, this does take a lot of time, right? This is a lot of clicks, tedious work, but it's something that absolutely needs to be done because if we get this data off depth, then when we go to interpretation, fictions, things like that, we get bad relationships and correlations. Really should. It's going here. I don't. I'm just gonna go ahead and move for this. So it's all right for the most part. Here, looking at this track here on the right, seeing sort of similar behavior. That resistivity curve a little bit. That's there. Good. You can see something happening here with the density. So at this point, we'll go ahead and correct these on the top and lock them in place. And then I might have to come down to here and just sort of fix this with an accordion well board. You have to sort of interpret at this point too and say, okay, is this an inverse relationship with gamma ray here? Or is this a stick and pull situation? In this case, I think it's a stick and pull, so I'll correct the low density like that. Because it's basically the same signature. It's happening over here with the resistivity. So this is looking good. Here I've got a spike. Need to line things up on. I can see with a bit of a depth offset there. We come down. I've got these two spikes here. All good. This is a very characteristic signature. Looks good. This is all fine. Everything is tracking quite well throughout this interval. Now here I've got some bad data, so if there was a need to close calipers and tools and so forth, I want to make sure that I pay enough attention here to correct anything that slips up this line. And these three spikes here, good. Side a little bit. Normally I will not take spectral gamma ray into the depth shift module because it tracks fairly well with the original gamma ray that's measured. You can see what I was doing here when I change this down here, push things up a little bit, so I've got to go back and fix that. It's tracking correctly. I'm only at 9,100 feet, so if we go back and look at our full log display, just coming into the Joe Mill formation here, and then after we get past this, for the most part, I don't expect too many inverse relationships anymore. It's the way that I have the scale set up, because we're going to be in more of the unconventional shale. So you'll see that change. Usually density is, it's off depth and resistivity. So we're run. Right. Changes your reliability here. Something down here. This is where I look at these three tracks, or the three curves in the single track with each other to sort of figure out where I need to move things. Here. Yeah, it's good. I have to ask myself, okay, well, what's going on with the density workshop? It's all different things. Based on this. I don't have anything that, like, in this interval, right, sort of muddy into where I should ship things. I can see a good correlation here in these two curves, but maybe the density is sort of lacking. So I don't know if I need to bring this down, move it up. I'm kind of playing around here to see what it looks like. I think that's a good answer for it. And then down here, right now, I've got some spikes. So maybe I think that's not appropriate. Leave that. It's a big spike there to line things up on. And because of the way we got this set up, right, this is a carbonate. So high density, low neutron, high resistivity, a good marker. I can see there's some issues with this data. It's not perfect, but it's not terrible. So. This is that Wolfgang B. So you come through here, there's a lot of these spikes. You'll see sort of sawing of the data back and forth as the tools are walking through it. So usually you have to do some depth correction curves. And we're at the bottom of the well here. So pickup data, typically this is always messed up a little bit. We'll line things up here. So get this start squared away. It's good. This last little bit here, I see the shoulder that's happening like that. This density data, if I look at it, I see probably some issues with this. And you can play these games here too, where you're sort of shifting this around to see what it looks like over here. I see two spikes. I see this shoulder in the middle that sort of aligns with this sort of signature. So, you can delete these out of here, play with them, whatever, but I think probably something like that is going to be what the final answer is here. So you can also go to a little bit of a higher scale and do one more pass through here just to see what it looks like. If there's any spots that you missed or look weird. So that'll be the final answer. And what we'll do now, to move this out of the way, here's all of our depth shifts that we've got in the table. So these aren't significant. They're half a foot. Some of them a little bit more or less. So finish. Save these to disk. In case something happens, IP crashes or whatever, we don't have to depth shift everything again. We've got them saved. So now I'll save it well. I'll close this plot format for the depth shift. The next step is to do, or apply rather, these shifts to the other curves that we have. So got something saved again, and what we're doing is the caliper, because we use the density caliper, we're using the bulk density shift to fix that, and then the density correction curve. PE is also for the density tool, so we'll correct it with the bulk density shift, and we'll do the other two resistivities. And it's just going to copy and create a new curve that's been shifted that's got DS and mnemonics on it. So I'll go ahead and run that. Step shifting the other curves. Okay, I don't care about saving that. And then I've got a multi-line formula that I'll run that renames these curves. Right? I don't have Sonic, so I don't really worry about it. It's going to go ahead and just copy these step shifted curves over the original mnemonics because we really don't care about preserving data. We want to go back to the raw set and create the set. So now I'm going to go through one more time and just visually verify that everything looks okay. It does. Save my run. Okay, so the next step is to calculate a bad hole flag. We can do that a number of ways. I've got a multi-line formula that I use. This is really up to you. I'm just looking at the density correction curve and then the bulk density of neutron, right? If these things are of extreme values for some reason, like less than 2 or whatever, it's going to put a flag over it. So I'll run that across the well. And in this depth track, you see some black spikes now. And these correspond to where the data's been flagged. So you can investigate these. And sure enough, right, caliper here is spiking, bulk density spikes, probably incorrect. Needs to be fixed. Same thing, we saw this at the beginning. Okay, flagged it. And then down here at the bottom, we've got some issues with that data in this interval in the shale. So good to go. I'm okay with this. Now, the next step, to do an interpretation, we need to have a compression of Sonic. So there's multiple options available to create one synthetically. We are going to need an offset well to build a correlation from. How we build that correlation, we can either use multiple linear regression. There's a number of tools and programs for that. Or you can use the Microsoft MLNet library that can, create regressions that predict the data. I'll do a couple of them just to illustrate it, demonstrate it. The first thing we can do, and by the way, let me just back up a little bit, right? We can create the compressional Sonic now using this depth shifted data, and it's going to create a synthetic curve that's probably going to be incorrect in some of the intervals where it's washed out. And we can edit that curve. The other option that we have is just to edit the triple combo data by itself without introducing the Sonic data, and then create the Sonic afterward. It's up to you on how you want to do it. For me, I find that creating the Sonic data up front is usually a better choice. The reason being, if there's any issues with normalizing data in our regressions when we synthesize the Sonic, we'll see it when we edit the data and we'll be able to fix it quickly. If we wind up editing all the data and then creating the Sonic, it's more difficult because we're not looking at the diagnostic cross plots and stuff to figure out what's going on. So what we need to do is run one of these programs, right? I've got one that does multiple linear regression over multiple tops. It'll break down the regression per top, so we get a more tight or accurate fit instead of trying to build regression over the entire well. So now I've got to look here and see which wells do I have that have recorded Sonic data in them that I can use for my regression. And there's clearly 3 of them here that have been finished. That F means that the well has been completed, meaning I've got a final Sonic curve to you. And I'll just use all 3 of these. So I'm looking at the University 7.3, the 13.5, and the 7-11.1. Pick those 3 for training wells, and then I'm going to pick my 632. I'll just select all my tops. And I'm going to select the curve that I want to predict here. So it's going to be my, sorry, I can back up. I have to go to the edit set. I'm going to select the Sonic curve, and then I'm going to select gamma ray, neutron, PE. I have to check that box for resistivity because we're going to use a logarithmic transform. This is a linear regression, so we have to transform. Then I'm going to use this bad hole flag to discard any data for our regression. And I just run this. Okay, it's going to spit a curve out in the MLR set called BP speed versus MLR. And then what it does is it tells me here based off of the data that I used, what the coefficients are for all these different feature inputs and then what the R-squared value is. And we can see for a lot of these, it's not very good. We've got a 0.15 in the mean, for example, and very poor correlation. So I'll go ahead and save this anyways. Well. And then what I'm going to do is come in and repeat the process, but using the decision tree based regressors instead of multiple and regression. So same interface and principle here. I'll select 711 at 7.3 and 13.5, and then 632. And then here again, I have to go to the edit set, have my curves in here. Now in this case, it's going to be different. I don't need to worry about a logarithmic transform on resistivity because the decision trees really don't care. They're nonlinear. So I've got this all set up. I select my comps. I'm going to do it over the whole well. Again, I have to put my bad hole flag in here. And then what I'm going to do is select mean absolute error as the regression metric that I'm going to use. And I'm going to just use light TBN. I'm not going to bother with its elements. Okay. The other issue I have here is working there saying the registration key didn't work. So I got to fix this probably because I'm not using that Wi-Fi adapter. So let me just go ahead and do that really quickly. Got a program that I wrote. Set this time. So we're all good to go. And I'll train this model. So we can see right away that in terms of mean absolute error, we're getting 5 microseconds per foot or so using this raw data. And this is actually quite poor. And I can look at what's happening here in terms of my regression. I'm still doing quite a bit better, I think, than the MLR. But it's not great. And gamma ray is a big driver, right? I can tell that from my permutation feature importance. Actually, if I went back to my my multilinear regression, I might see a high coefficient. I can run that here too, ordinary least squared. So I'm going to do that real quickly. This should produce the exact same result with that MLR program. I'm just doing it over all the times. And again, see what's happening here, right? You can see what that cross plot looks like. This is not right. Gamma ray is a big driver, so is neutron. So if those aren't normalized properly, they can create some significant problems. So now you can see when we do this sort of work, there are a lot of issues that we have to deal with. I've got a program here to do basic normalization. I'll bring my gamma ray curve and make a multi-row plot. And I'm going to generally normalize these. So I think I had the 13, the 11, and 7.3, and then university 632. Got to set the scale on it. Still, I pick it up and probably let's see. 13, 11, 7.3, 6.17. So all of these wells don't have the exact same penetrations, and doing a blanket normalization of gamma ray probably isn't the best thing in the world, but we have to do something. We have to pick a reference to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and look at my well that I've got here. I penetrate from the San Andreas through the spawn. So for the 13.5, I've got basically the same upper interval, but I end in B. This one has got a whole bunch of crap up top that I probably don't want to include in this evaporite sequence, Braybergs, and so forth. That also ends in B, 731. This one goes through the whole thing. So in this case, maybe what I'll do, instead of using all of the wells to train for the sonics, I'm just going to use the 731 and I'm going to limit the interval. So what I can do here, now I've got these 2 wells, right? I have to change the data where it's picking it up and ending it in the histogram. So I'll go into the 7.3, I'll say get depths from zones. I'll pick my crop set. And I'm going to start in San Andreas because that's where my subject well starts, and I'll end in the spawn bottom. I'll do that for all the wells. And you can see it picked up in some places and didn't in others, depending on what tops were available. This one, it's got them picked up properly. I'll go ahead and apply that. Now I'm only normalizing data over the appropriate interval. So we've got our subject well, other than synthesized data in, we've got our training well. You see there's a bit of a difference there. So I'll go ahead and normalize it. Right. 731 is going to be my reference. And then I'm going to pick my 632. Do a 2-point normalization. 5 and 95 percentiles. And bam, there it is, right? So I've got a new curve now. It's going to be called edit gamma in. Just go ahead and minimize that. And for all purposes here, I really don't care about preserving. So what I can do, I can rename that by gamma ray original, and I'll just rename this one to gamma ray. So I'm using that normalized gamma ray then in this well in my regression. Now, before we saw what happened, right? We saw that we had a fit 5 microseconds per foot, mean absolute error, not a very good fit at all, not acceptable, right? So we're just going to choose a 731 now for training. We'll go over the entire thing. We've got our normalized gamma ray and train the model. I can already see that I have runs that are down to 1.7 or 1.6 microseconds per foot, which is much better than what we had before. Look at our regression. 0.93, excellent. So if we were to go back to this MLR programming, we can do the same thing. I can click the 731 and 632, pick my box, hit a set, pick DPC, gamma ray, neutron, DP, resistivity, bulk density. Right, we've got everything in there. My bad hole flag, I'll run that. Look at the R squared values now too, right? So it's just that some of those other wells we had lumped into the training data set created an overall data set that was just offset. PNC doesn't have the best one. I'll go ahead and say that. So now we've got 2 curves that we've created, synthetics for sonic. We're going to drop these here into this tracking here. Make sure that they're on the same scales. 40 to 140 on the red. So the red curve is from the MLNet program. The black curve is from the regression. They aren't terribly dissimilar. However, I'm going to go ahead and use the MLNet curve because I think it's just a little bit better. I'll go ahead and drag that into the edit set. And I'll rename it so that it's consistent in our workflow as DPC. And I can go ahead and close this, and I'll leave this program open in case we want to use it later on. But for the most part, now I have a synthetic sonic at top and bottom, and I can see that it tracks with neutron fairly well, seems to respond the way it should. So next step was to run a custom music program I've got in order to create bad hole flags. Because I'm lazy, I've actually programmed the things so that I don't even have to put the curve names, it'll automatically look for standard mnemonics and pick them up. I'll just go ahead and run that, and it's running through all the open wells that I've got, entering that data into the program. And it creates these 4 cross plots: bulk density neutron, sonic neutron, bulk density sonic, and PE gamma ray. And so what I'm looking for here is overall trend of how that data is supposed to look by formation. I know that PE, for example, should range between really somewhere around 2.5 to 5, and I think I'm a little bit low here because PE is going to need to be normal. And that could have also been an issue when running the regressions because PE was an input that was shifted. If I go back and look at my statistics here, I can see that PE was not a significant feature. It's not impacting the results that much, but it's going to be, there's going to be a need for normalizing that at some point. Whether I choose to do it now or later, this data is in pretty good condition, so I'm just going to go ahead and have a quick look at it again using the histogram now. And I'll use my 7.3 well, my 632 one. Yeah, I don't know why I just decided to pick up the wrong scales on it. So there's my 7.31. I can see again that 2.5 to about 5. It's got the scale on the end. It's fine. And then here's my 632. So you can see that that's shifted. There's something wrong with it, right? So I'll normalize it. And it is very common for PE to be offset like this, vendor to vendor. It's just an issue that we have to deal with. Now I can do 1-point normalizations of 2. I can do it by hand. In this case, now I do a 2-point by hand because I know that the overall shape and width of this distribution is probably correct. Just need to make sure put it over. And instead of guessing at what percentiles, I can just do this right by hand. And I sort of like the way this looks. I'll finish that. And there we have it. That's my final PE curve. Now what that did when we ran that is it created a new curve in my edit set called PEN. What I need to now do is take that curve, which I have a formula for. I actually where it is. So I'll just do edit PEN, edit PE, just overwrite it. Now, after I've done that, I probably should rerun my machine learning regression because I've normalized that PE. Even though it's not a significant impact, I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. So I've already got this open and ready to go. Like, very easy. Go ahead and train the model again. And actually, I did this incorrectly. You don't need to retrain the model. All we had to do is rerun it. But in any case, and that spit out a curve to the MLR set. So now I need to take this and overwrite and make it the same curve that I have. We'll just watch it here in this track to see if it updates. And it did slightly, right? Not a major thing, but get as accurate as we can. So now I'll rerun my plot program. Now I see my PE is sitting in the right neighborhood. My sonics are a little bit tighter. And I can filter this with the Babel flag that I had made to get rid of some of these points. The other thing I can do is just color all of the data in the well. And then I can pick another well, say that 7.3, overlay it. I can see that the sonic data is just a little bit noisy right now. Well, I can also put the 7.11. Like, wow, that's really bad, right? Because it's got some salts and things in it that are really washed out in the upper section. There's the 7.3, or I'm sorry, the 13 number 5. Maybe that very, very good comparison, right? If I take this out, it's really hard to see that color, unfortunately, but basically it's the same data. So, with that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and rubber band what I think is good data as well. Create our flags that we're going to use to hit it. So for the most part, this is a really good data set. I don't have to do a lot of heavy handling with it. I'm good. Let's snip that data off the PE and clear report some kind of good values of it. So I build flags, it created the curves that I need, leave that open. I'll just verify that here are my curves that it created. Next, I can run the auto edit module. I have saved parameter sets here so that I don't have to recreate this every time. So I'm putting them in this underscore set folder. Got a couple of them here. One we're going to use is the default curve auto edit, which is for quad combo. Got all my curves. All the inputs are correct. Now I need to load my pops over the top of the parameter set so different for this well. Then I'll run it. It's going to automatically edit all the curves. And I can create a plot and look and see what it did. So the black dashed curve here is the regression, and then the red curve or the solid color curve rather, in each one of these tracks is raw data, and then it's highlighting what it did. So I can see, for example, all this yellow highlighting, that it's taken out this spike, created what we now see. These flags here where it's flagged bad data, so sometimes it picks things up that it shouldn't. Deal with that. For the most part, again, this data is in pretty good shape. Here I've got PE values that were 6.57. It shouldn't be that high. If it's a carbonate, which it probably is, it should be about 5 limestones, so it's fine. They got rid of this data here, I saw earlier, fixed it up. And I scroll down to the bottom, we knew there was a bad interval there, and it's fixed that. So I'll go ahead and save this for consistency. But once we pull it up, we don't need this anymore, so we'll close that. The next step I do is I copy these edited curves into the final set. And I use multi-line formula to do that. And I'm going to uncheck UPS because we don't have that in this route. We do have spectrogrammetry. Let's go ahead and run that. And now my edit set work is done. I should have all my curves in the final set. They're ready to go. I have one last plot format that I use called AutoEdit Splice. I've got a splicing program. I'm going to come back through here, make any adjustments that I think are necessary that the Auto Editor did not pick up. And I've got this user parameter set I'm going to load in here for splicing the data. The way that this program works is it's got some basic logic flags in it to look at the regression data and look at the actual data, and it's out of the appropriate band, it'll copy it. So here, like for example, this synthetic sonic data, I think it didn't quite work properly. It was a little bit too slow. So I'm just putting the depth ranges in here and running this, and it's copying and splicing that data in. Here again, like I've got some spiky data. You know, do I want to do anything here? Probably not. That's fine. I'm looking for deviations between the MLR curves in black and then the actual final set data. Here's a good example here, right, where there's a density correction bit, you know, caliper disclosed. Like, do I believe this spike in Sprayberry? Probably not. So I'll get rid of that using the splice program. You'll see what happens here. It takes way too long to run. Back down and just zip through the data looking for anything. Again, this well is very good condition. So we're all cleaned up for the most part. I don't have any problems with this. Close this now. Then I go to the next step. So I've got a pre-baked plot format here where I kind of visualize what I did in terms of the density and the other data. Save my well in case something crashes. And now I'm going to go to the next step in our analysis, which is to compute the play volume. I'm going to use the final curves. I'll put this into the eval set. Got everything set up here. I use neutron density, sonic density, and a gamma ray. And I'll close that ML program. We don't need that anymore. So this is the sort of plot we get. It's over a single zone. Again, I've got a program I've written, play parameter fill. I'm going to run this. And what it does is it copies the tops and sets endpoints for us automatically, so that it makes it easier for us to go through and do the analysis. So the first thing I do is the neutron density. Again, I've got pre-made plot formats for this that have the right scales and overlays. And I'll go ahead and sort of adjust these things to how I think they should look. We've got a typical play analysis here. I know that the San Andreas Formation has got these spikes in it, right, of some dolomite. So I set my endpoint down here at dolomite. I sort of set my clean line, the dirty line. Glorieta looks okay. Clear Fork looks okay. Sprayberry looks okay. Just kind of click through these to make sure that the program did a good enough job of picking the play endpoints. So this is all good. And then the next thing I have to do is this exact same exercise, but for sonic density. But when I do this, I kind of compare the two. I expect sonic and neutron density to align fairly well. There are some intervals where they may not. Typically in some of these more conventional carbonate systems and things, but in other areas they should. Kind of lower that a little bit in this. Kind of looking at the clean intervals and then the dirty ones to make sure that my sonic picks are consistent. Remember, we're using a minimum play model here, so whichever of these is the minimum is what it's going to pick. So if my sonic is a little bit higher in some intervals, it doesn't bother me because neutron density is sort of the standard. And then we've got gamma ray superimposed on that as well. So we have to be careful about that if the gamma ray isn't flipping our analysis one way or the other. I'm just adjusting very slightly, push that sonic endpoint closer to the neutron density. And keep in mind, too, this is not recorded sonic data. This is synthetic data, so it should produce fairly similar answer to the neutron density. If it doesn't, we don't want to rely on it too much because we created it from the neutron density. So here in the Wolfcamp C and D, you can really see there's a disparity. And I can move my play endpoint up a little bit there. I can move this back. See, that's fixed that. C. And then in the D, I can move my clean line back a little bit, and then it's fixed it as well. And I may draw that back a little bit as well, a little bit faster. And then spawn, similar sort of thing. Maybe I can move the clean line up a little bit. Extend this to make it a little bit slower, and everything sort of aligns. So we're done with that. Last step in clay, what I'll do is I'll come through and I'll adjust my gamma ray. So in this case, what I'm looking for in these shale intervals, I don't want gamma ray to be too low to clip it. It has automatically set these values to match neutron density, so oftentimes they aren't perfect, right? It's trying to get us close so that we don't have to mess with it too much. Like here in the Wolfcamp B, I can see I've got to lower my 2-point gamma ray down a little bit. Beam also, I think maybe go a little bit higher. It's looking at the magnitudes of that, make sure it's not looking at Clear Fork's also an offender. Sometimes in the lower Clear Fork shale, or in this interval here, right, you can see it's really clean. We're computing clay with neutron densities a lot higher than that. So that's zone number 3. I might set my gamma ray down even a little bit more because it's a minimum model again, right? And throughout this interval as well. Maybe I have to go even lower. There we go. Right? Maybe that's the right answer we should be using. So I'll go ahead and zoom out on this thing. This upper interval, I think, based off of what we got, I could probably lower that a little bit. And the reason for this one up here is that you've got, maybe I'll go a little bit higher. I'm trying to match that upper interval, and I'll let the gamma ray throttle these clean intervals bottom. So now we can see our final V play curve. You can see what my Wolfcamp C and D, these are high play intervals, I expect that. Lower Clear Fork shale, I expect that as well. I'll take another look at that and say, okay, is there any reason that this is incorrect, or maybe I can break this off as well on its own, right? Sort of look at it compared to the rest of the Clear Fork. Is this appropriate? And I'm okay with it, so it looks good. I've got my clay computed. The next step is to run a multi-well batch operation. I've got pre-saved formats for this based on whether we're using synthetic sonic or not. And I'll choose the well that I've got, 632 done. And the user formulas that it's running here, expand this so you can see them. So I'm calculating my reservoir pressure and my temperature gradients. I'm calculating thermal maturity and TOC properties based on depth and correlations. These are multi-line formulas. I'm calculating a first pass at TOC using an MLR. We're calculating U, photoelectric cross-section from bulk density and PE. We're copying those parameters that we use from clay analysis to curves so that we can use them in the inversion, and then I'm just calculating a porosity from density. So I'll run that. I'll run all these multi-line formulas. We can now see in our plot that we've got a TOC curve from top to bottom, and we've got a V pyrite curve, we've got a clay. We've got everything that we need to run in this solver. So this is the final step, sort of, in the analysis. Again, like everything, I've saved sets out so that I don't have to re-enter this information. So I've got the mineral solver set. I have to load my new talks over that. Okay, so now I need to come in here and set any additional parameters. For the San Andres and up, where you can have some anhydrite, I've got a separate model for that, which incorporates it. The rest of the things are going to be on our primary model. Here I'm going to set our RW and RMF values to a first pass guess. I'm going to use the total porosity model, RGPT, and just ensure that our vendor correlations are correct. Now, here we know that this is a Baker run. What Baker tool was used and all this stuff, you know, okay, fine. This is important to get this right, but for this example, because I'm not going to go dig out PDF files and whatnot, we're just going to use whatever we have here, but we're going to make sure we use Baker to know this is a Baker run based off of the mnemonics when we go through data. So here's our models. I don't need TOC in this anhydrite model because it's clean. This one's fine. We've got everything we need to run this, so I just hit the run button. And it finished. Now I need to reload this plot format. I can see what it did. So looking at the PE here, right? This is producing a fair amount of carbonate in some of these lower intervals. And I may want to take a look at my PE again. My final PE curve compared to some other wells, just to make sure that everything's correct. So this is my well. Let's see if there's a shoulder on it here. I'm pushed up a little bit high there. So there's my 7.3. There's my 13.5. Right. 7.11. I think this needs to be changed again. This is not out of the ordinary because our initial normalization was done to edit the data, so forth. We don't really know. So no harm, no foul. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and do this by hand, where I sort of drag this over. And, sorry, I've got to do something. It's just fine. What I think it should look like. So that's better, right? And if I look at my 7.3, it's sort of right on top of that as well. So because we did this, now we need to recompute a couple of things. And I've got a multi-line formula for that. PE redo, right? So I'm going to copy my normalized PE curve that I just did over final one, and then I'm going to recompute U. So look at my that. Then I'm going to run our second pass at TOC that's going to utilize the mineralogy cutoffs. I'll run that, you'll see the TOC curve change quite a bit. And the second thing after that I need to do is go in and line out the TOC, which I've got a user formula for the top of the clear fork, because that Glorieta and San Andres do not have TOC in those notebooks. So we got rid of that. Now I can rerun the mineral solver. Looks a little bit better, right? We got rid of some of that line down here, but it's still where it needs to be. The Glorietta is nice and clean, and the sand, which it should be. Everything is good. So now I have to go ahead and interpret my saturations using Pickett plots to get a first pass. And I'm going to use resistivity versus total porosity to make a cross plot. I usually leave this open. I'm also looking at the inversion results here, by the way, for any error, and I reconstructed quite well, so I don't see any problem with this. I'll go ahead and change my scale by 0.2 to 20,000 of the So this gets interpreted, right? What do I believe? I've got my initial value set at 0.05. I think this is probably the saltiest case that we're going to wind up with. So in many examples, we can increase this, and it makes sense, right? Like there's a 0.1 RW in the San Andres, makes sense for a wet zone. I think that's fine. I think the profile looks like that. For the Glorietta, again, we're seeing consistency there between zones, consistency between the RW values, 0.1, right? Clear Fork, 0.1. Sprayberry, maybe a 0.08. Maybe it's not, it's quite as high. And I can also do this in multiple zones. So I can select, like Joe Mill, my Lower Sprayberry, my Dean. Maybe I'll just stick with these three. I can see they sort of overlap. So these are sort of connected. They should probably have the same RW value. I'll just do one pick, all three of those. And I'll lump the Dean and the Dean and Lower Sprayberry together. The Dean here, I think that's, again, a 0.08. Fair enough. Wolfcamp A and B all do together. Pick that again at 0.09. I think that's a fair value. These two I will do together because they've got all that in play. Oops, sorry. Push the wrong button there. So I'll pick that right about there. That looks good. And then the Strawn is the last one. That's 0.05 is pretty much where it needs to be. Now, when I come back in here, I can see all those values that were picked. I think the RWs are fine for this well. I'm going to go ahead and close this and save it. And then one last thing I can do is I can run another multi-well batch operation to run our saturation program. I, again, saved a format for this. I just need to pick my well and all. And what this does is it runs a few user formulas to calculate variable MNs, and then it runs the saturation probabilistic program to P50 to P90. So I can pull in my P50 saturation, for example. We'll rescale this signification batch or something. So the program varies the RW values from 0.05 to 0.15 and uses the variable MN and fix the P50. And you can see, for the most part, that pink fuchsia curve, which is the P50 water saturation using that PT model, RGPT, matches what we did from the Pickett plot very well. This is just another way of visualizing. And I've got another plot format too that I've saved, baked out here with copy and paste this in here, where it's got some uncertainty bars on the P10 and P90 plot, and so you can see which intervals have the most uncertainty. Obviously, where this high porosity is, it's got a very big impact. We'll just see the difference there. The last thing I need to do before I finally finish with this well is I'm going to go ahead and rename this curve to BTC_MLR because it's a synthetic. And then I'm going to go ahead and adjust this EWI to G4F, which means it's a triple combo that you synthesize sonic and the well has been completed. I can also put any comments in here that I want about the well, like normalized PEU, SYN-DTC, clean data, right, for the most part. And then I'll save it. I can also open up a multi-well correlation viewer And I can compare the results of my analysis to an offset. So we had been looking at that 7.3 well previously. And I'll pick my tops there. I'm going to load a single plot format into both wells. I'm going to use the MSOL cross-section plot format that I have. I'm lining on it. So from well to well, we're looking at water saturation, mineralogy, the clay, and porosity. I don't expect to see large variances between these wells because of proximity. There's quite a bit more carbonate content in this University 7.3, and you can see that in Florida well. Not so much in our well. Even the clay volume, you can see that it's much cleaner in Florida rock than these carbonates are. Clear Fork looks very similar, right? Well, the well that we just interpreted is on the left here. So you align some of these things out. The spikes are fairly consistent. The total clay volumes are fairly consistent. Porosity magnitudes, the overall shape. Now I've got something going on in here at the top of the Spraberry in this well that I don't in the other. It's sand, that's fine. That happens. My Wolfcamp A is fairly consistent. The saturation profiles are consistent. Magnitudes of the clay volumes and the Wolfcamp B and the porosity, yeah, everything looks pretty good. So I'm okay and happy with this analysis. I can save maybe this plot format out, and I'm done with this well. So hopefully this has been a useful video for you to follow the process of interpreting some potential.